Hi guys, greetings from Bulgaria. After a short pause, I'm really glad that we're again together for a new video series. Let me share my screen. And today we will continue, our lectures about Selenium. I'm Anton Angelov. I'm from Bulgaria. Probably you read some of my articles and watched many of my videos on the LambdaTest channel. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There are many awesome videos each week, and click the ring bell so that you get notified whenever we publish something. This new course module will be really exciting. It will touch some of the important subjects that probably you will hit at some point. The first lecture and the first module from the course will be about how to automate sign-up forms. It will be a little bit longer than the others, but I think especially for the people that are just getting started, this will be a really essential video to figure out what are the different test cases and ways to automate even this kind of a simple type of functionalities, right? And as you'll see, we'll cover many different scenarios and aspects of testing and automating such functionalities. Then, in the next module from the course, we will upgrade our knowledge, and I will show you something really interesting that you cannot find anywhere online, how you can automate and test even the responsiveness of emails using third-party services together with WebDriver. It will be really interesting because we can create various unique inboxes in emails, and then via API we can get them, then we can read the HTML of the email and even render it in the browser. Another connected aspect, especially when we are working, when we are talking about registration forms, is sometimes as a protection we have CAPTCHAs, and as test automation engineers, we need to know ways how to work around them and how to automate them. So this is definitely something interesting, and we need to cover it all. Something again connected, how we can work with cookies. As test automation engineers, we need to understand how the websites are working, and cookies are essential part of that. And many often we can speed up drastically our automated tests if we know how to work properly with cookies. So this is again an essential topic. In the fifth module from the course, we will cover the different types of weights in Selenium. We're going to talk about a few design patterns. And as you will see, they can drastically improve the maintainability and stability of our tests. And as you know, it's part of life. There are many type of errors and exceptions that over the time you can hit with Selenium. This is something normal, and you need to know the different types of exceptions and what you can do to avoid them, or if you cannot avoid them, what to do then. And lastly, we're going to talk about event listeners and what for we can use them, and we can use them for many different exciting things. So stay tuned, hit the ring bell so that you get notified, and let's begin. Also check the LambdaTest blog. There are many detailed articles about many of these subjects. I myself sometimes each week I'm checking the book, and I'm reading it. There is really good information there. And also, while we're working on the videos, of course, we will leverage the power of the cloud, and I'm going to show you how you can run these different types of tests inside the cloud on different platforms and browser versions, etc. And now, let's begin with the subject, automation of user sign-up forms. The guys from LambdaTest has created this awesome website called LambdaTest Playground. And it's a big website, demo website that you can use for practicing. And this is the thing that we're going to do now. It's like an e-commerce site where you can purchase stuff. For now, we'll stick to the registration form. Also, a while ago on Automate the Planet blog, my personal blog, you can check. There is a really detailed article about not automating registration, but we're talking about login and how many test cases you can figure out to test the login form. And actually, there are more than 100 test cases. And this is one of my favorite questions for interviews. It's somehow related to the registration form, so check it out. They're connected. So what before writing any code, this should be your practice, right? Before any single line of code written, we need to figure out what to test before automating. So of course, we need first to test the happy paths. What are the happy paths? We put all the valid information here. We press the privacy policy, click continue, and we expect that on the next page, it should be written, successfully created your account, right? Another happy path is instead of, again, happy path means that less important cases are the validations. First, we need to make sure that the form is behaving, it should be, it's doing its main thing. Of course, validations are really important, and we'll have many tests to cover that. But many people are confusing it. When I am asking these questions of interviews, they're starting always with QA mindset, trying to do the validations and missing the essential part of the functionality. So don't do this type of mistakes. Another thing that we can do is, when we are pressing tab, we can click the continue with enter, and this is another way to finish the form. And many hardcore users, especially programmers, are as me, are working with the keyboard, so you need to make sure that these keys are working with the tab and with the enter. Another thing that we need to do as a happy path is, of course, if you have requirements, you need to figure out what are the limits here, the minimum and maximum number of symbols here and the allowed symbols. And then for each field, we need to do boundary value analysis. And for example, here, if we hit continue, it's pretty obvious what should be the limits here. We should test with a single symbol and 32 symbols here. These are the two boundaries. And the rest of the fields, we fill them with default data always, not with their boundary values. Why we do that? This is true also if we need to check the validations. We do that because we want to, there is a term called bug masking, and this means that if you are checking for two different things, you may walk a bug, but you can miss another bug. So one of the bugs is masking the other. So it's like a common QA practice just to test for one single thing, even manually. So when you're testing the boundary value analysis, this means that everywhere else we're just putting default values in the middle of the boundaries, and we're testing just the first name. It will be the same with the validations. We'll check only for one of the validations, the rest will be with normal data. So we need to do this for all of the fields. Be careful with the boundary value analysis. You cannot trust these messages here. We need to make sure that this is correct, because this might be not as the client wants, right? So you should check first the requirements, real requirements, if you have them, or ask a business person, business analyst, for example, or the stakeholder. You cannot trust that the front-end validations are written correctly. This is one of the things that you need to check. You need to check the database, whether these data types are correct or not, because again, they can be different types. Someone made mistake. You cannot derive your requirements directly from the code. This is wrong. However, you can use this information to see whether there are discrepancies, because many often there is discrepancy between front-end validation, server-side validation, which is, when you push the data to the server, there in the server code, while it's processing there should be a different validation, which is definitely something that we're going to check. And the next thing is, again, to check that in the database we have the same validation constraint, the data type is correct, and is like accepting the correct number of symbols. So as I said, our happy part is to check for the different boundary values. Then for the emails, in the next module from the course, we're going to talk much more about emails, but it's a common sense to check for not valid emails, right? Another essential test case that you need to check is when we try to register with already created account. You should not be allowed to do so. Also, there is one more where if you have reset your password and you again try with this different email with the reset password, sometimes in my career I had to test such functionalities, and there is a little bit of a difference because people sometimes hard code some conditions with these statuses. So this is another interesting case. Here for the email, of course, you need to check the boundary values as well. Also, there are complex rules that you can find online to check for whether an email is valid or not, like how many symbols you should have here, what are the allowed symbols, then some for example, the LambdaTest registration on the real side, there is validation where it checks whether this is a work email or not. Some websites has some security measurements to not allow these 10 minutes emails, disposable emails, to be registered on the platform. So this is definitely something that you need to check, that this validation is really capturing that. For now, I will leave this to you as a homework. Regarding the phone number, this is something more interesting. Actually, as you can see here, it's written enter a valid phone number with country code. Actually, I noticed that there is a bug because for them this is like a valid email, valid phone number. Even it's not checking not only the country code, but this is valid email, this is valid phone. But anyways, if this is just like example website, so it's normal some of the validations not to work and to have some bugs. But if you need to be really truly testing the phone number, because I had to do that for enterprise projects, many often the phone number is part of the billing process, and there some websites have this advanced validation logic where they check that the phone number is the same as the country and the country code. And it's really tricky to test phone numbers. I opened this international prefixes table where for each of the countries you can see the country codes, and we can create a data-driven test where there are many rules about the phone numbers. For example, you can start with 0. You can miss the 0, but at a plus. So you need to make sure that this is acceptable. For some countries, depending on the culture, some people leave these spaces here. So you need to make sure that your form or trims automatically the spaces or accept them, and later it's like processing them correctly. You need to validate that. Then, as you can see, for different countries, actually, after the mobile prefix, the number length is variable. So depending on the country, you need to make all this type of combinations to check whether this is true or not. And of course, as you can see, it's already there, and you are sure how long for different countries the numbers, the length of the number should be. To be honest, in practice, many people just don't do this kind of complex logics and validations because they don't have the time. But if the number is really important for you, then probably you need to communicate that to the development team that they need to improve their validation. Otherwise, people are just providing them emails. And this is especially important because for some businesses, the sales engineers later, they're using really heavily the phone to contact the customers and trying to sell them something, etc. So this is essential. Or some services like they send SMS or phone calls to verify that everything is working. So here we're going to, again, probably create a data-driven test. Also, by the way, as I said, there are many different rules. There are many standards. For example, this International Telecommunication Union, they have PDFs with like 30 pages describing the different formats of the phone numbers. As I said, this is really complex subject. So you can go even further and check this out. As I said, in my practice, I had to do that, so I know a little bit about it. We need to do boundary values for the password. As you can see, it's between 4 and 20 characters. Again, depending on the website, you need to check the requirements. What are the allowed symbols? Because sometimes there is this complexity, like, for example, some websites have more advanced passwords where they require, for example, numbers, big characters, special symbols, etc. And if this is your case, then you need to verify that the form is accepting all the different symbols. It's accepting different type of languages, for example, Cyrillic. And you need to make sure that if it's, for example, if you enter all of the different symbols here, and if the password is not matching really the complexity requirement, then to provide here the correct validation message to instruct people what they should do. Also, there is another case that we will automate. Definitely, we need to make sure that this is input password. In WebDriver, this is really easy. We can get this attribute type, and we need just to verify that the type is password, and then you are sure that it will be displayed like this and it won't be visible. For your sign-up forms, it's really important to check these optional fields where you are sure that no matter, for example, if you leave it empty, you will be able to register and pass, or no matter what is the value here, you will be able to complete the action. Many often we need to check this general validation here. This is really important. And definitely we need to check that we won't pass if we don't check here the privacy policy, right? And just after that, we will check the different validations here. Of course, we'll check the required fields that you cannot pass without the value. And then again, using boundary value analysis with 0 and 33 characters, we'll check that we'll get this validation message here. We'll do the same for all of the fields with boundary values and check these validation messages. From usability perspective, there are other important test cases. First, we need to make sure that all links on the page are referencing the correct pages. For example, this is like leading to the login page. This is leading to the correct privacy policy page, etc., etc. Then we need to have a test to check the main heading, that it's displaying everything. We need tests to verify all of the labels, that they are correct and they are referencing the correct field, because there is a special attribute telling which label for which field it is. It's called for, and it's referencing actually the ID of the input. Then we need probably to check the placeholder information here. The placeholder is this gray text here. This is actually, if we look here, you'll see that there is this attribute called placeholder, right? So this is again something that in WebDriver we can just get the placeholder attribute and check it out. What else? There is another interesting attribute here. There isn't usage of this. However, you can actually control with the HTML attribute called tab index which field is selected next. And again, for some users, this is something important. So you need to make sure that for some forms, the correct tab index is selected. For example, it's not okay when you press tab directly the button to be selected, right? Because when you press, all the relations will be triggered, and this is really annoying. By default, the next input is selected, but this really depends how you implemented the form. So this is something, maybe if it's not automated, for sure you need to check it manually. Some forms, when you refresh them, will preserve the information. If this is your case, this is something that you need to check. For example, for longer forms that they are part of a workflow, where you have different steps when you need to provide the information, you need to check the back button and the backspace button, that you are able to navigate between the pages and the information is preserved. I noticed some cases where you have the breadcrumb button, this is working, but when you press the back button here, it's not working, because somehow the developers made the logic when you click the HTML button here, it's doing some magic here to preserve the information, but they haven't subscribed to the event here for the back button or for the backspace button, and there was a bug. So this is something that we need to check. This is just a single page sign-up form, so we don't have such cases, but I'm talking in general. For some sign-up forms and registrations, you're allowed to register with Gmail, Facebook, GitHub, LinkedIn, etc. If this is your case, definitely you need to automate that and make sure that when you are allowed to be logged in and your account is created again, in most cases, you need to verify that the website is asking for a password after that, because depending on the functionality, for some enterprise projects, I noticed that you're like logging with Gmail, but we're under the hood, we're creating your account in our system. And this means that you have a different password. It depends how it's implemented, but you need to make sure to check that the account is actually really correct, because this is totally different workflow for each of the social services. And then you need to verify what's going on when you click, for example, Gmail or Facebook. It's always asking whether you allow this service, your website, to get your information from this social service, and you need to check what's going on when you reject that. Do you proceed? What happens? Can you repeat that? And maybe lastly, and we're going to check the code. Of course, you need to do at least some simple security testing. There's a really awesome open source project, OWASP Foundation. Their website is really, have long resources about security, and definitely you need to check for simple SQL injection, simple cross-site scripting, supplying into the inputs some JavaScript code to see that whether later it's rendered or not. Usually the best practice is just to encode it and somehow trim some of the symbols that are a potential danger. So you can check these resources. They're really awesome, especially for web application security testing. Of course, there are many, this is like a whole subject with many different courses and books. We cannot cover them now. So for now, I will just leave it to you to check it out later. And now let's see how we can automate that, right? You can download all the source code is in GitHub. You can download it in the description below. You will find the information. And here I used the in our project, I created Maven project with Java with all of the dependencies here. I used JUnit, everything that we covered in other videos. If you missed there is a whole course that I recorded for the LambdaTest channel, JUnit course, you can search for it. Also, if you haven't watched it, there is a whole course about Selenium 4. It's really awesome, check it out. And in the, I think, JUnit course at the end, there is a whole video, long video about page object model with JUnit. So check it out. For now, there we discuss different types of page objects, why you can pick one of them or the other. Now I used one of these types, right? So generally the page object model, we use it to reuse some of the actions, the elements, just to be in a single place. And this is really easier way to maintain the tests. Here, for all of the elements, inputs, labels, etc., I created getters. It's a matter of preference whether to make them public or private. Here, I made them public because we use them in some of the tests. I skip the prefix get just to make the usage a little bit easier and to make the test more readable. This is my preference. We use the driver as composition as a private field. We provide it to the constructor. And then in most of the places, I just use ID, right? Which is the preferred way to get elements because they're stable here. However, I will discuss just a few, for example, this type of locator. As I said, how we find the label. Here. You can find it by text, which is fine, but later I prefer to have a separate test for checking the text here. And as I said here, for all of the labels, the way they work is that in the for attribute, they actually contain the ID of the input that they're labeling, right? So this ID will be the for attribute value here. So this is the way I get them through XPath. When you press Control F, and if we start typing here, label, square brackets, in the JUnit course, they're actually in the Selenium 4 course. When we talk about relative locators, I talk like for 20 minutes about these complex XPath locators, so you can check it out. So with square brackets, we can write expressions to reference and write more complex scenarios. So with @for, I can get the different attributes in their values. And here I can copy this. And here it is. I got this label for this input. I can do the same for all of the labels. Another interesting thing that I wanted to show you is that in many of these forms, because sign up or not, especially if the components here, like different forms are reusable among different pages. Many often we don't have IDs like here. They are auto-generated. And in order to handle this, and this is many often happening when you have to work with these big chunks of data tables, then we usually use the labels and something as the unique thing to locate the near element. And we can use XPath access or relative, the new relative locators. I prefer to use XPath. So I'm going to show you how we can reference, actually, how we can get the validation here. As you can see, the validation is just below the input itself. But again, if we cannot really easily select the input, I'm going to show you how we can select it via the label here. So let's imagine that I want to select first this label by its text. Again, square brackets. I can use the text method, and then I can provide its text here, last name. As you can see, under it, it's on the same level. As you know, XPath, usually when we use the backslash, we go deep into the next layer of the div, like this, right? It's from top to bottom, to the right. And if we want to select the next sibling, there is a way to do that in XPath, and it's called XPath access. This is why I prefer XPath over CSS, because of this XPath access. In CSS, you don't have that. You cannot reverse the DOM, vice versa, in different directions. So this special way is called following sibling, and with 2 columns, we can write div, and then div1 is more, and this is how we select the validation. Really easy, right? And another, the last locator that I wanted to show you is actually how we click here. If we check it, you'll see that it's not the checkbox. The checkbox is here, but as you can see, it's a little bit misplaced. And if you try to click it, you won't be able to. However, the functionality is written in a way when you click actually on the label itself, this is working. And as you can see, the checkbox, it has an ID. And actually, I can select the ID and then the label below it. And we can do that again with XPath access. I can say input at ID, which selects the ID. And then I can say following sibling 2 dots, and then label. And here is the label, and we can click it, right? And now let's see whether there's something else that we need to discuss. Many often I just use the following sibling, nothing more. We use the labels, so we have all of the inputs, last name, the label, the inputs, all of that. What else? We have the privacy checkbox, the way that I showed you the link, because we need to automate that. We have a method, because the page object, it contains all the elements, but also all the actions that we can do on the page. So we have a method for opening the page, which is normal. We have a method for opening the privacy policy, and this is a separate test where we need to check whether the privacy policy is okay or not. And as we discussed in the video about page objects, no matter what language you use, it's a matter of preference whether to put the assertions here or not. I usually, when we have these long validation messages that are constant, I prefer to, reuse them, because as you can see here, the usage, we use them in 4 places, 8 places. So instead of copy pasting and moving this to the test itself, I prefer to reuse it here. And if at some point this is changed, I can change it just here. It's just a matter of preference, but I prefer to put the assertions here because they're basically methods that you do on the page. As I said, if you want to get the validation or the error message, here I created this general method where I provide the input label, which is last name, first name. This is the label. And then with string format, I'm generating the XPath. This is a common approach in automated testing. And then I'm just finding this and returning the error message to check it later. We have a method for asserting the placeholder and getting the placeholder by its element itself. And then the most interesting and most important method here is the registration method, that it's basically containing the whole workflow where we fill the data. And we click the button, we click the privacy policy, checkbox, etc. You will notice that I provide here a special class called user. This is called a model. Model classes usually group many of different parameters so that we don't need to, for example, here have 10 parameters. Usually the best practice is to limit the number of parameters to 4, max 5, because it's really harder after that to use the method. And really, this is just, this is the model. We use models many often in API testing when we need to post some data. For web testing, many often when you have these huge forms, we can group the information in such models. You will notice here the structure of the project. First, in main Java, we have the logic where it's not a test. We have a special package for the pages, special package for the models, special package for factories. In a minute, we're going to talk about that and the utilities. And under test folder Java, then we have a package for different types of tests, and I group the tests by the different types. So for the model, as I said, I grouped all of these fields in this model class. And we generated getters and setters for them. It's just a holder for the data, that's all. And then we have, in a minute, I'm going to explain this factory. But if we return to the registration page, you will notice that I just use the getters to get the information. And here we get the different elements using their getters. And we use the same keys to type the information there, getting it from the model. You will notice this if conditions here, and we need them because sometimes if you try to type empty string, you will receive an exception. Again, we'll talk about Selenium exceptions in a separate video about many different exceptions, but this is something that you need to check because sometimes we will set empty string for some of the information to check the validations, and then you need to make sure that you're not typing empty string or no. This is why we need this here. Then again, if you have this here, and if you instruct WebDriver click no, and if it's already selected, you will receive again an exception on some browsers. This is why we check that whether it's already selected or not. If it's already selected, we don't click it again. And we check the user model whether this should be subscribed or not. And we do the same for privacy policy. For the privacy policy, it's not just big of a deal because it's a checkbox, not a radio button. And then we can select it and unselect. And then lastly, we have a parameter called useEnter, whether you click the button with the mouse or you use the enter to submit it. That's all. And I created a separate page object for the next page. It's just referencing the main heading where we check it's the main heading, and then we check that the main heading says your account has been created. That's all. Just to check that the account was created. Of course, in the real world, you want to connect to API, database, etc., and check that everything is working correctly and all the fields are there, and that you can log in and all of that. but just this is beyond the scope of the video. Then we have these factories. What is the factory? As the name suggests, this is a different design pattern. If you read some of my books about design patterns, this is a common pattern that we use in unit testing and system testing and front-end testing to initialize these model classes, and not only, but basically to create something. In our case here, we are creating default data for the user. And here, in order to generate the data, as you can see, in many places, I just hard coded the password. But for the rest of the information, I use a library called Faker. It's a famous in the Java world. It's called 𝒂𝒐𝒏. We use it to generate random, properly formatted information. First names, titles, emails, phone numbers, all of that. It's really nice and has many options. As you can see here, for the email, it's a little bit trickier. Why it's tricky? Because in the way Faker works is, if you provide internet email address, it will return well-formatted Gmail and Yahoo mails. But you will notice that actually these are real people emails, and you don't know who receives these emails. And if you use it for enterprise project, then it can get really weird if you're sending for your internal system emails. And this is why I use the safe email, which is just a dummy email. However, you will notice this additional class called timestamp builder built unit text by prefix. Why I use that? Because actually Faker is not really creating every time a random email. It has just a list of 100 emails, and it's just returning them random. But as you can guess, at some point it will start repeating them, and your test will start to fail because they're not unique. This is why I created, this is really useful utility, and this is why it's under the utility package. It's called timestamp builder. Once it can generate a GUID, which is a random string every time. It's like, you can be sure that it's unique. And then in this method, build unique text, we are just building a timestamp from the text, which means that we have the year, month, date, hour, minutes, milliseconds, etc. And with this synchronized keyword, we are making sure that this works for parallel tests as well. And we are adding this timestamp as a prefix or suffix to the data. This way, we make it truly unique. I prefer timestamps because they're, from it, later, if you need to debug the tests, you can be sure it's a little bit easier than GUIDs. You know when it was created, etc. Even at some point, for some runs, you can add a unique name of the run and add it to these prefixes, and this is how you can later troubleshoot the data. But this is like a longer discussion. So for the emails, I'm just adding this timestamp in front of the email so that I'm sure that it's unique. That's all. And as you can see, we're just using the setters to initialize the object, nothing more. It's static because it doesn't support any state. It's always just creating new users. That's all. And now, if we need to look into the test, as I said, they're under the test folder, and we have a sign up page, and I just created separate files for different types of state validations, happy paths, etc. Here is private variables. You will notice that first I have two lists: JavaScript exceptions and console messages. Why we need them? Many often you need to check that that they're even if the registration is successful and you pass the form, you need to make sure that you don't receive in the console JavaScript exceptions, because many often it's really important, because many times for enterprise projects, A lot of the information is passed to marketing platforms and sales platforms, and many different professionals are using this for marketing or sales. And if this is not working, it's really messing up the flow. And how we can do that, again, you can watch, there is a whole video in the Selenium for video course on the LambdaTest channel about troubleshooting. Here I just use some of the code. With Selenium 4, we can use the DevTools. Just you need to be careful, because for now, if you use CDP DevTools, it's a little bit different. The new bidirectional APIs is just available for Chrome and Edge, because they're using the Chromium engine. And if you use the bidirectional API, this is like the new way in Selenium that will be supported among all of the browsers, because there it's directly in the protocol itself. Anyway, you can watch the video. I'm not going to explain much about how we set it up, but basically here in this part, we're adding a listener to listening for the console messages and for the JavaScript exceptions. And at the end, in the teardown, we are printing all of this in the output. And then, for example, if you run your test with Jenkins or any continuous integration or command line, you will see these JavaScript exceptions. We are not failing the test. Again, you can watch the other video. There I explain even how we can fail the test. For now, we are just keep it simple as an information. And now, as I said, here we have the happy paths. Another important thing here about the names of the tests. You will notice that I have this way of writing the names. First, I have what should be the result. User created successfully, or any validation message is displayed, right? Then I have this when, and then I describe all the different conditions for this to happen. I say here all required fields, and we click continue button. And here we list, this is just an easy way to find out what should be the result and what is the setup. And for this type of tests, it's fine to use underscores. For the rest of the methods, it's not okay. We separate, the way this is more readable is that first we have the arrange, then we have the act, or what we do, and then we have the assertion. Visibly, we separate them with white line. Here, first, I use the static factory to create the user. Many often, as I said, we just use the default data, and then I change it only for a single test. Is here what we should type. For example, here I have for the first name, I set just a single character, and you will notice that I use here the string utils repeat. For example, here it's more common. Instead of writing it, counting it myself, I'm just using this strings util that comes from Java. It will repeat these symbols 32 times. This is how I create the boundary values here. So basically here, I just open the page, I call the register, providing the default information. This is whether we need to use enter or not. And then I call the other page to check that this successful message is there. That's all. And as I said, for other happy paths, for the different fields here, I use the boundary values. One symbol, 32 symbols, then for the last name, the same. This is interesting. Again, if you don't know how to write data-driven tests, check the JUnit course here. In the middle, there is a video about data-driven tests, and in much details, we talk about the different attributes, but basically, the power of the data-driven test is that when we use this value source and when we use parameter tests, this test will be repeated for each of the values here. Again, they can be much more. And if you don't need to execute it every time, probably you don't need to. We can use different tags, and you can use and run this test on demand. For continuous integration, we just run just the priority one tests usually, because we want to execute them much faster. And then here, as you can see, we have these different variations for the passwords, etc. That's all. And we check here the optional parameters. Then regarding the client-side validations, almost the same. We check for JavaScript exceptions, and then one by one, I'm setting, for example, the first name to be empty, to repeat it 33 times. Actually, here, this should be a single symbol. Empty, again, single symbol. And then what else? Here, this is interesting, how we check that we have this asterisk for the password field. We get, as I said, the attribute type, and we check that it's password for the password and the password confirmation. And this is the way how we check the client side. The client side validations, they happen through JavaScript. And as I said, it's really important from security perspective to check that the server side validation and eventually the database validation is there. How we can do that? We have another file called server-side validations. And it's possible on different browsers, actually through Chrome options, to stop the JavaScript. And you can do that through this weird way. We create a map of string objects, and we have this name profile, manage default content settings, JavaScript tool, which means probably turn off. And we set this experimental option, and when we initialize the Chrome, actually here, where it is, we say Chrome, turn off the JavaScript. And when you execute the tests, they will be executed with turn off JavaScript. You need to be careful because sometimes you cannot, it depends whether the form is posted through JavaScript. It depends whether it's Ajax or something else. Sometimes this is not possible, but you need to be careful and check it out. The rest of the tests are the same, and the server-side validation will be rendered. You need to be careful because sometimes for the server-side validation, there is a separate message and the test won't be the same. Then for the usability tests, as you can see, there are many of them. As I said, we check the links. So from the page object, this is why I made some of the getters public. We get the login page link, and then I check it out. Probably here, actually, to check it, we need to say get attribute href, which will get the link itself. Otherwise, this won't work. This is how we check the links. Then I check the headers, just getting the main heading, and then get the text and check that this is there. For the labels, I check whether they're displayed. It depends whether you found them by XPath and their inner text. If you do this, then it's fine just to use is displayed. If you find it by the for attribute, as I did, then probably you need to have additional assertion here to check the text inside as well. And then I have these additional tests for checking the placeholder, the gray text in the inputs. As I said, there are additional tests, and I also, by the way, check the text inside the button, that it's the correct text inside the button. Again, you need to check for existing user, the user with reset password. You need to check for the security, for tab index, for the refresh, back buttons, social services. There are many other test cases. I just covered the most important ones, at least for this sign-up form. And also, it's really important to check them on different browsers. And for this job, we can use LambdaTest, of course. It's really simple. You can go to the documentation and on capabilities generator, it will generate these options. If you use CDP, you need to make sure to use this CDP to true and the Selenium option here. And we need to execute it against different browsers, right? Chrome, Firefox. You can find the usage in your Google Analytics or whatever web analytics you use. If you need to do web mobile, check out again the Selenium Form course, because in the latest videos I talked about mobile emulation and emulation as a whole. There is like many different things there. And also when we're talking about mobile and different screen sizes, as you can see, if we resize, the layout is changed, and you need to make sure that you have tests for checking the layout as well, that everything is rendered properly. And you can do that with such cloud platforms as LambdaTest. And if you need to again execute the CDP stuff, again, most of them work only on from an edge. You need to use this augmented driver to add the DevTools stuff to the interface of the remote WebDriver. Otherwise, this won't work. And the rest of the test should be the same. That's it. I think we covered most of it. I hope that it was really useful to you. In the next module from the course, we are going to continue the subject about sign-up forms with talking really advanced stuff about how to automate emails with different third-party services, how we can even responsive test them on the LambdaTest or in your local browser using emulation. It will be really interesting, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments, I'll be really happy to see what you think about the video and what you want to hear to record next. I really want to hear your thoughts. Check out the LambdaTest blog. There are really detailed articles there. They're really awesome about many of this stuff. And don't forget to get your LambdaTest certification about Selenium, JUnit, and many others. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye.